Introduction. And as Kyle mentioned, we're going to talk just briefly. My apologies to the to those who attended my sectional. There'll be some overlap from the PRTI Teachers Convention last fall that some of you may have made too, and that's kind of what piqued Kyle's interest in, or the committee, in asking me to tweak it a little bit and present here. So hopefully, even if you were at it, you'll get a few new things today, hopefully. I suspect they hit the bottom of their list of requests. They must have had a lot of turndowns to come up to me. But anyways, a few things about where I got the inspiration for this sectional Now Institute meeting. A couple years ago, I was attending a sectional at the PRTI convention in Iowa, led by Jim Rigneris from Iowa. And he gave a topic on teaching as a calling versus a job. I don't know if anyone remembers that one, but I went to it and I thought it was really thought-provoking. And he mentioned something that kind of really set me to thinking. And at one of his master's degree classes he's taking at Dort, the professor had put up these 5 pillars of good teaching. And then he said, okay, now rate yourselves 1 through 5. And if you're rated, 4 or 5 in all 5 categories, you'd be sort of a rock star teacher. Like every teacher would just be going gaga over getting you to come to their school and teach. And maybe if you scored high in 1 or 2 categories, you might be a passable teacher. But if you're not scoring very good in any of these categories, you ought to consider, some other type of career. Because, teaching's not for everybody. So those pillars that he laid out were biblical was one pillar, applying biblical principles to your subject area. Knowledgeable of your subject area, or your grade level, how to teach the subjects in your grade level, passionate about it, as well as a local factor. Now, I can't remember exactly what he meant by that, but it was something, what you got to kind of gauge the community or the school you're in and fit what their expectations are. And the last one he had was persona, which is more sort of charisma or just rapport with students. And then, so if I started thinking, okay, how would I rate myself in these 5 pillars? And I wasn't doing so great, And I thought, well, how could I improve? And then I thought, how could I become that teacher that scores high in all 5 categories? Or are you just born a teacher? So I thought about that for a while. And I think, no, I remembered back when I first started teaching. And I thought, I think I've gotten better. I think I've gotten higher on each of these pillars. And I think we all can. Even some of you who are experienced and you probably would rate yourself very high on each pillar, there's still ways to improve. And that's why I'm kind of, part of what made me give more thought to those pillars. A high flyer, he called them. So you could become a high flyer teacher. And so then I thought, well, I was first going to take all those 5 pillars and kind of turn that into a talk. But then I kind of got veered off from some reading that I've been doing. And I came up with a topic called the 3 levels of authority of the Christian school teacher. And I think it does the same thing. It addresses some of the same categories that Jim thought were important in becoming a better teacher, but in a different way. Took at it from a little different angle. The first authority I'd like to talk to you about today, level 1, is the authority of position. So let's take a look at that together. That's strictly, if you can read from Colossians 3 here, obey your parents, a basic command of God. And as we walk alongside the parents, instructing their children and assisting them in rearing up their covenant children, we adopt that authority of the parent. And in the Protestant Reformed schools, in my experiences, that's pretty solid, pretty rock solid. And the reason I think it is mainly because the preaching in all our churches, you hear the preaching that says the teacher is authority, you have to respect the teachers. They're always giving thanks for the Christian school teacher, for the good Christian schools, and how valuable the good Christian school teacher is. So we appreciate a certain level of, I think, authority just because of our position. A well-respected position of a Christian school teacher in our circles. And the parents, you know, what I like to call old school parents, who the teacher's always right type parents. You know who they are when you look over your roster. You're like, oh, okay, these kids have old school parents. And then there's some of the new school parents who maybe the teacher isn't always right, and maybe it's good to question the authority of the teacher. So sometimes I think we do fight that a little bit, where you have to try to prove, okay, I am the authority. But for the most part, it's pretty much a given that that's automatic, that you have that level of authority because, why? Because I'm the teacher. So it's the most basic level, directly from God. All authority comes from God. The students didn't vote you in, okay? They didn't, and then they can't vote you out and say, well, you know, we no longer consent to be governed by you, and therefore we're going to throw you off and find something new. No, the basic authority comes from God. And it's important for us to remember this level and not to forsake this level. And it's important that we don't abuse this level, in my opinion. So it's a fine line. We have to embrace it and we have to enforce it, but we can't abuse it and just say automatically, because I'm the teacher. I don't have to give you any reasons ever. Okay, I'm saying we want to stray away from abusing that authority of position, but we also have to maintain it. We have to maintain that we must be obeyed and that we are the teacher. We have the authority biblically, and therefore there is a divide between us as teacher. We have an authority level, and the student. There is a difference of authority there, and we have to maintain that on a daily basis. We can't just have, oh, everyone's all equal, we're all equal learners, we're co-learners, but we have to make that authority clear each day. If we're ever going to attain to higher levels of authority, we can't lapse on the idea that we are the God-given authority at that time in the child's life. So we don't want to neglect this level in an effort to, those words are pretty small, aren't they? I just realized. Can you even see them? You can't really read those small words, can you? I don't know why that's so small, but I'll read it to you there. It says, we don't want to neglect this level in an effort to be the cool teacher. Okay, and I'll get to rapport in a minute, like how to make rapport with students and how important that is. But, for example, if the students say, you know, hey, what's up, dog? You know, we can't say, yeah, what's up? And you can remind them in a kind and gentle way and say, okay, John, Rick, back up again and come back and try that. Let's try that over. What you meant to say was, good morning, Mr. DeVries, how are you? Okay, and remind them that there's that level of authority, and it's not what's up or just, hey, you know, you have to demand that level of authority in your, whatever is appropriate to your grade level. So we don't want to just stay at this level and just be the teacher that has to constantly berate the children that, hey, I'm the authority, you must listen to me, or I will make you stay in for recess, or I will make you write lines, or I will make you serve an 8th hour. So we want to progress to higher levels of authority, but we have to be grounded in the idea, biblical concept, that we are authority of position. So as we develop deeper levels of authority, they're intertwined, they're dependent on each other, and then we'll be seeing ourselves depending less and less on this position. We're going to have less and less times where we're going to be writing out 8th hours. We're going to have, as we develop these other levels, we're going to have less and less times where we're going to have kids in for recess, or where we're constantly raising our voice, or trying to maintain control of our classroom. If we attain these other levels, then that will fall into place. So I think it's important that we get deeper levels of authority than just strictly, I have the authority and I have the ability to discipline you if you don't obey the authority. The next level that I like to talk about is the level of knowledge. And as the name would intimate, the idea is that you are an expert in your grade level. Maybe it's a 2nd, 3rd grade, or maybe it's a subject level, maybe it's music, or maybe it's math, social studies, if you teach the middle school or high school level. And so you have that authority of knowledge. That's based on the idea that you're an expert, that you went to 4 years college, possibly master's degree, you studied, you continue to read, you're an expert in your curriculum area, or again, in your grade level area. If you're an elementary teacher, say you're a kindergarten teacher, you're going to know as much as you can about the mind of a kindergartner, and also how to reach the kindergartners, what different curriculum you need to have to properly train a kindergarten student. So this fact fosters another level of respect. So you could be the teacher, and trust me, I've been there. You know, I've been that teacher with the only thing I got going for me is the level of being of position. You know, because I started out in a small Christian school like many of you did, and I taught stuff that I had absolutely zero authority of knowledge on. I mean, I can still remember coming in the fall and the teachers and the principal, hey, Rick, you're teaching auto mechanics this fall. All right. Well, 1 year it was, you're going to teach accounting. Okay. But did I have any modicum of authority of knowledge in these subjects? None, right? And can the students tell this? Of course, right? They're like, okay, he's a teacher, and he told me to take this engine apart, so we'll do it, but he doesn't know beans what he's talking about. So you're missing that level of authority at that point, and you're missing a chance to get into a deeper level if you don't have that authority of knowledge. That's why it's great if you can teach into your subject area, your expert level, the grade level that you chose. Great. But we realize that we don't always have that opportunity, right? We've all been there where we're asked to do things outside of our authority of knowledge. So in those cases, we can quickly bone up on it, read up. But on the other hand, we're hopefully land this position where we can really dig in and foster another level of respect by building on that level, by building up our authority of knowledge. We should be able to demonstrate that. Not that we have all the facts every time, that nobody can stump us, but it's helpful to read as much as you can, take as many classes as you can, try to get your master's degree, be able to demonstrate that you care about the content that you cover, that you teach, and that you love the content that you're at, or you love first grade, and you want to be the best first grader teacher out there and learn as much as you can about the first grade and the different subjects that are taught in the first grade. So that should become shining through as part of the authority of knowledge. So how do we go about fostering this authority of knowledge? I mentioned several ideas already, so I won't belabor the point. But as I mentioned, the students are usually pretty good at telling if you're faking your way through it, which we've all probably, I'm guessing, have been there at one point in our life where we're trying to fake our way through it. We're like one chapter ahead of the kids, and we're just kind of, we're just going to try to get through this. And the students can know, they can pick up on this fairly quickly. Even the younger kids can know that. I mean, I did teach at Adams Christian School. Most of you don't know that, but when I first moved to Michigan, I did teach at Adams Street at the old Adams 1 year. And then over the transition to, I call the new Adams. Those were interesting times. But I still remember I moved from the state of Washington, and the board president called me, hey, heard you moved out here. Yep. We need you to teach third grade. Can you come over here and do that? Yeah, all right. So I showed up, and I'm like, the first day, I had to ask the kids how old they are. I had no idea. I'm like, well, how old are you kids? I don't know. I had no idea how old a third grader was. So fortunately, I had Joey Uphoff in my class, and he helped me right along, as a third grader. He helped me very good with, he's like, oh, here's what we do, and, oh, Mrs. So-and-so does it this way, and here's what you should do. I don't know, I wouldn't have been too far without him, I don't know whatever happened to Joey Uphoff. Is he out of town? I don't know where did he move?
He's on the school board in Loveland right now.
There he is. He's a good kid. So one of the things I did when I became a teacher, I used to work out. Like my students, they're like, you work out? I used to work out, and there was a man at the fitness center back in the late 80s when I was just becoming a teacher, and he said, oh, you're going to be a teacher, huh? I said, yeah. He said, well, the only thing I can tell you is just read, read, read. If you want to become a good teacher, and you're a history teacher, read as many history books as you can. It's the most important thing you could do. You don't have to make a lesson plan involving that, but just be a widely read teacher in that subject area, and that'll probably be the most profitable thing. And I think that's true. You could become a leading expert. I said this at the sectional, and the lady had a Chromebook, and she Googled it, and I was close to getting it right. If you read an hour every day on a subject, you would be the world's most renowned expert within not very long. If you just read 1 hour every night on a topic, you could become one of the top experts. So if you focus your reading, it doesn't take that much to become an expert in something, if you really read on the topic that you love and that you care about. And that's another thing that's kind of fun with the Google now. The kids have the Google Chromebooks, and you can say things, and they look at you like, yeah, right. And then they Google it, and they're like, he's right. You know, you're like, yes. You're building that, that recognition of knowledge when you do that. You know, when they poke each other and like, yeah, that's actually who the person was, you know. So I already mentioned get your master's degree if you can. Take some continuing ed classes. Join groups. I know here you are. I mean, this is a good example. You're here because you want to become a better teacher. You're hoping you can glean maybe one idea, maybe two, or at least some goodies. And so you're like, well, here I am. And so you're doing something towards improving. So you're on the way already towards fostering more of the authority of knowledge. Now, this is just a little different side plug, but I mean, some of you travel. I look around. Many of you travel. I see Ed. I see others. And he would maybe agree that one of the besides read, 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 traveling is great for teachers. It really expands your horizons. There's so many things, your science, your math, your music. I don't care. You can work your experiences of travel into, I don't care if you go out west for a trip with the family, see the Grand Canyon. It's wonderful stuff to work into the classroom, right? So take those opportunities to build and grow professionally, expand your knowledge and your experience, and the kids will be a lot richer for it. I'm talking way too much, so I'll pause here for a minute before I go on to the third and final level and see if there's anybody, and check my notes and see if I forgot large sections of what I was going to say while I look for hands on anyone who wants to share their ideas on knowledge. Obviously, for the lower elementary people here, it's a lot easier to fake your way through it to a third grader. Like, I could maybe teach third grade math, but the smarter kids, you know, like Joey Uphoff would probably have called me out on it and said, you know, you obviously don't know third grade math. So you could become an expert on brushing up on the things you don't know very well. As a third grade teacher, maybe you went to college as a social studies teacher, so you're like, yes, I can teach third grade social studies, whiz bang, but I don't know much about how to, you know, grammar or whatever. So you can brush up on that. Any other ideas on how to foster the authority of knowledge that you think would be good for everybody to be like, hey, that's a great idea? All right, we'll keep moving. The third and the final level I want to talk to you a little bit about today is the authority of recognition, okay? So the first one is I'd like to talk to you about is bond is above, and above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. And the idea is to get a connection with our students, whether they're kindergartners all the way up to 12th graders. We have everybody, all the ages covered in this room here. We have people who teach little kids. We got teachers who teach 12th graders. And how do we show our love for God? By showing our love to our students and having that thankful life that we live, the thankful life that we live, modeled to our students and modeled in our teaching and brought out in our teaching. And that will foster, and that was what we talk about when we get to the authority of recognition. A teacher knows they've attained the authority of recognition when the students eagerly embrace their instruction and are willingly guided into making applications of that knowledge to their lives as it's being taught and modeled by the teacher. What motivates us to reach this level? Obviously, the Christian love that we have for our students and our strong desire that we have as a Christian school teacher to prepare them for their place in God's kingdom. You know, there's many reasons why we maybe got into teaching in the first place. It wasn't to become millionaires or, well, maybe it was for the summers off. I don't know. But I'm thinking for most of us, it was because of our desire to work with young people and to prepare them as God's elect children of the covenant for their place. So that's why we should be compelled, as we reach this authority of recognition, to become an expert in applying God's word. Work out the biblical principles. Work out the biblical principles for your subject or your grade level that you're teaching. And engage the students. One of the biggest things in reaching this and able to get that message across to students is you have to have some level of rapport with the student, or you're never going to make that connection known, that love that you have for them. If you just keep it as completely cold, sterile instruction, take out your notes, write this, quiz on Monday, and you don't get to any deeper level with the students. And so you got to build rapport if you're going to ever reach the level of the recognition that we're talking about. And I always thought, you know, it's easy. That was little Joey Uphoff right there. That's not actually him. It's just a random picture I got off the internet. But the thing is that's the kind of kid that you can be like, easy to engage that child, right? I mean, that kid's just eager. And when you go back to your class, not tomorrow, Friday, let's keep our priorities straight, you know. And so when you go back on Friday and you look at that little face, you're like, oh, this is easy to make it engage that child, right? It's easy. But then some of the other more cynical adults here are going to have someone like this looking at them, like, I dare you engage me in this subject area, you know. You get the older students. It's a little more challenging to make that connection to that bored child who's just staring at you like, I don't like government. Government's boring. Don't even try to make me interested in this subject. So we all have different challenges, and how do we build that rapport with our students, and how do we get that rapport? There's a guy that I heard speak recently about the Teacher Challenge. It's a 5-day teacher challenge that he recommended, and one of them was building rapport. And he said, you know, challenge yourself and say, I'm either going to call home, especially to some of the more challenging kids, and say something encouraging and get to know and let them know that you appreciate their child, or email or text the mom or the dad, or make some positive reach out to that family, or maybe go to one of their activities. Maybe they got a concert, or maybe they have a choir concert and the kids in choir, or maybe they have a game that you can go to. And maybe it's the one that's maybe not so already, gets enough attention. You probably don't need to go to the basketball game to get rapport to the players, but maybe go to something that nobody goes to and say, all right, well, there's Mr. Dykstra. He's at my recital. He actually cares. And you can, or maybe some sort of other match that the student's into. Maybe he's into martial arts or something. You show up at his match, and no one ever really knew the kid was an expert at this, and there you are. That would just go miles towards engaging that child, that you showed up at his martial arts match, and there's Ed Boss. And he looks and he goes, Mr. Boss is here. Yeah. The kid would be so juiced. He would be so pumped. So those are some challenges we can have to try to make those connections with those people. So we can model love by showing compassion and showing patience to our students, and knowing that they're dealing with a lot of things too. I know a colleague of mine, I just talked to him in the hall, and he built a relationship with one of the students, and he's like, yeah. Just yesterday, he went home. His mom was in the bedroom crying. his dad and his older brother are screaming at each other. They had to kick him out for the third time. The boy comes home. That's what he's dealing with. He opens the door. He's dealing with this instantly. He's got to go, comfort his mom, deal with all this strife, all this chaos. And then he's got to come to school the next day and pretend everything's fine. And if you don't know that about that child, if you have no idea, you've never said, oh, wow, you're going through a lot right now, you're not going to be nearly as patient. You're not going to be nearly as understanding of that child, or you're not going to be able to connect with him and say, okay, maybe you're the only chance that child has for some good, stable adult time, relationship with someone who you can model for them. And so the other thing you can do to reach this level is maintain a proper learning environment, a safe place where your kids can come and they feel safe, that they can explore and learn, and safely without being picked on or bullied. Sadly, that happens in our own schools. There's bullying. I haven't heard too much about it lately, but it does happen. Maybe on the playground, things like that too. I know it happens. Does that mean I'm done? Oh. So, keep that. That's what the kids need. They need that safe environment, whether it's on the playground or in your classroom. Now, I read another book recently where the author says how do we learn? And there's 3 words I want you to think about. And this is one of the challenge for me, and I think for all of us, is to be compelling in our presentation, varying our methods, all right, to reach all our students. And I don't think that differentiation used to be a big buzzword, and I understand that's unrealistic. I get it. You can't make 24 different lesson plans for every class, as much as they say that that's what you need to do. Each individual child has to have their, individual plan. I mean, maybe some of you know how to do that, and you should be giving a sectional, because I don't know how to reach 24 different learning styles at once. So what I try to do is try to be compelling in the way you present. I mean, don't just be a wet fish up there. Engage the kids, talk to them, be as lively as you can about your topic. You might have to do some crazy things. I know. I talked to Eric Greers about this the other day. He's got to do all kinds of crazy things, right? Some days you got to be this, some days you got to be that, and you have to reach him. You have to be compelling. You have to be compassionate in order to get. Well, he's got a lot of kids too. I mean, you're dealing with a whole lot of students at once there. But so you got to really be compelling in your present and vary your methods. If every single day you do the exact same thing, you may not be reaching all the different students. There's 3 words I want you to think about today to help reach this level of authority of recognition, to help us become better teachers, basically, and being more compassionate teachers and more understanding and reach more students. First is autonomy. And we learned this at the Brain Seminar that we had a few years ago as part of our PD at Covenant. And that is to give kids choices. And I just learned a neat idea just at a conference I was at. Nowadays it's March Madness, right? So they got brackets. And that's something we could use for our kids. Just take a bracket and give like 8 different ideas on how to cover cell biology and say we could do this, 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 or this. And then start narrowing the bracket down until finally this is how we're going to cover it. And you guys chose it. You narrowed it down by following the bracket, by discussing it and saying, okay, which of these are you guys like, okay, let's move these 2 down. These 2 are still in contention. And now we're all the way over here. That's how we're going to cover it. Or this is the event that we're going to focus on. So that gives them some more ownership, some more like intrinsic reason to study rather than just because you told them to. So give them some choice in the matter, some autonomy in the matter as well. Otherwise, could you see any of your students doing that? They didn't even bother to move the tree. They just said, someone said, paint a white line alongside the road. They went right around the tree. I know you can't see it because it's too small, but it struck me as a funny picture. I'm like, I could just see my students do that, painting it, just veer around there, because they're too lazy to pick the tree up and move it out of the way, or no one told them they had to, right? So there's no sense of self-motivation to say this is what it takes to get the job done. They didn't see the bigger picture. They just knew they had to paint a line, so they painted a line. The classic example of intrinsic versus extrinsic is the Encarta versus Wikipedia battle. And we all know who won. In the late 80s, Microsoft spent hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars and hired tons of people to produce these Encarta CDs. Right? There was managers, there was people there's whole divisions were created to create Encarta CDs. All right? And the motivation was to create a neat CD product called Encarta. And the idea was we pay these people well, they're going to create a good product that teachers are going to love and students are going to use to gain knowledge from Encarta. Right? Well, the other end of the spectrum was let's motivate, let's not pay people anything, let's just let them research and write what they want to write about and see if we come up with a useful product. And of course, as everyone knows, Encarta in 2009 folded up and it doesn't exist anymore. So the people who had the motivation to themselves to research and to write and to do things that they love are going to be much more motivated to make a good product. And Wikipedia, I know we don't use it for necessarily a scholarly source, but try this sometime. I have this with my advanced history class. Annika knows because she's the only one that was capable of doing it. I don't know if she remembers, but we had to write for Wikipedia, and it's very difficult. It's like, all right, you have to get published in Wikipedia. That was the assignment. You have to pick some historical topic, and you have to contribute to Wikipedia and get it accepted by Wikipedia. You don't remember. You're the only one who actually pulled it off. So it's see how good she feels now, right? It's very difficult, wasn't it? And I mean, I don't want to brag you up too much, but you got to be pretty smart to pull it off. And so I don't do that project as much anymore, but it's challenging to do that because you got to find something you love. You got to put a lot of work into it. The second one is mastery. We have to strive for mastery, and there's a lot of ways we can leverage technology for mastery. You know, a lot of you use quizzes, Quizlet, Kahoot, other things where kids can go back. A lot of people tape their lectures, and you can rewind them. You can play them again. Any way that students can practice and create mastery. It doesn't have to be technologically enhanced. It could be the old-fashioned, way. It doesn't matter, but you got to give them a chance to attain mastery. And then, of course, you got to have a purpose for the students. And one of the things I wanted to share with you, if we had time, and I don't know what time I have to get done with this, but who's in charge here? Kyle, are you in charge? Do I get done at 4:30, or what's my... Okay, fair enough. So I'll just, since it seems like I got time, I'll click on this. So one of the things that we could do is called Book Creator for Chrome. How many of you have Chromebooks that you could either check out for the students or you have Chromebooks available to you? So almost everybody could get Chromebooks to their students. If you give them a sense of purpose, like, okay, this will be graded, that's one purpose. But if you say, we're going to publish it and send it home to your parents, or you can email it to your grandpa and grandma, or you could post it on your class website for your class that you have, or whatever, you can do what's called Book Creator for Chrome. And all you got to do is click on a new book, and then you can just go right ahead and say, okay, maybe it's a third grade social studies that you're working on, and you want to do something third grade social studies. You're going to say, all right, it's on Lewis and Clark. So you go, boy, that's projector isn't very good, is it? Lewis and Clark. This may not work because I can't read the small print. Oh, there they are. Okay. So we click on that, and we're going to select it. Okay. And that goes into our book. And then you can add another page and talk about Sacagawea. You can look at some of the different, and you just keep adding pages. And then you can add sound. all your Chromebooks have little built-in microphone. You click a little sound button, it says record now. And you say, well, in 1803, Thomas Jefferson hired, Lewis and Clark to explore the West and try to find a river all the way to the Pacific. And then you go to the next page, you put a picture of some of the things they found. You say they actually found this, this, and this. You put a picture in there, and then you publish it, and the parents can play it, and it's their voice, little Johnny's voice comes through, and they can send it home. So it gives the kid a real purpose. Like, someone's going to see this. Someone's going to, I know the same thing as putting it on your refrigerator. You could send it home. You don't need to use Book Creator for Chrome. You could say, all right, I'm going to send this home to Mom in the little the Monday note that goes home. Put it in there and tell Mom to put it on the fridge. Dad's going to see it when he comes home from work. It's the same idea. It's just using, it's just leveraging technology to send it, make it easier for the kid, and to vary your techniques and say, we're going to try something different. We're going to use these, the Chromebooks or whatever, and it's worth a try. It's that simple. So that's that. Other things we can work on is being honest and fair to all of our students. I make a list of rules for the teacher because I'm a weird person, Everybody has the rules for their classroom. Don't chew gum, don't run, don't spit, don't poke each other, whatever. And I figure they all know that. Of course, I teach at a higher level grade. So I make rules for myself. And I say, here's my rules. And if I'm not following them, feel free to raise your hand and call me out on it, okay? Like, I'm here to serve you. I don't favor students. If you think I favor students, raise your hand and say, you're giving Johnny all the benefits of this. Okay. Feel free, if I violate any of these rules, I got 8 of them for myself, then you can by all means raise your hand and say, because the teacher should be held responsible for attaining that authority of recognition. Be able to walk in their shoes each day, get to know them a little bit. Pray for each student. I know that's hard when, you have 100 students, 115 students. I think I got 115. But if you got a class of 16 kids or whatever, I know, and I shared the story before, I went to a presentation by the Teacher of the Year in Minnesota one time. He was a Teacher of the Year, and he said one of the things he did is he got to school early every morning. I think he was a 5th grade teacher. He got to school every morning, and he sat in each kid's desk. He sat in their desk for a few minutes and made a prayer for each kid. He sat in Johnny's desk, Sally's desk, and he said he really felt that was a big part of him. Not that he won Teacher of the Year, but it just helped him think about that child, pray about that child. And in order to make a prayer for that child, he had to know a little bit about the child. So what makes you think that you've reached all these levels? You maintain your level of authority. You've spruced up your knowledge. You feel very knowledgeable. You're like, have I attained authority of recognition? Well, I think you have. If students like to emulate you, that's why I got into teaching, because I adored some of my teachers. I want to be that person, right? How many of you got into teaching because you just really loved a teacher? You can be honest. Yeah, you just really loved a teacher. Like, I want to be a teacher because Mr. So-and-so was so great and a great influence. So there was a decent number of hands for that. The other sign of this, that you're doing a good job and you can pat yourself on the back, is you consistently produce excellence in the classroom. Well, when they pass it on and, Brian's teaching 5th grade and the 6th grade teacher doesn't go, oh, I got Brian's kids. They can't do math. They can't write. Then, no, that's bad. But it should be, yes, these guys are coming. They're going to know their stuff. He produces excellence. He's passing the kids on that are they can reach and master the different things that are expected of a 5th grader. And you're that person in your building, and you're also that expert that everyone's go to. Like, oh man, I wonder, how do we process food? Oh, let's go to Gary Lanning. He's an expert in biology. He's known as an expert. And that's then you know that you've attained that recognition of knowledge. Like, oh man, I wish I knew more. What happened in the Civil War battle? Where would you go? Who would you ask? Right? I would have asked Gary Vanderschaft, but that's when I'm back in the day when I taught at Adams. I would go to Gary Vanderschaft and go, what happened in this Civil War battle? you'll never get out of there, you know. You'll be there for, you'll be there for a while, right? So then we all know of that expert in the field, and that's what we can attain to be. That, you know, I had that when I went to Adams. I didn't only have Joey Uphoff. Fortunately, I had other help. You know, I could go across the hall to Renee and Kristen and Miss Dykstra. Do you guys remember Miss Dykstra? You know, she was invaluable. I didn't know when a kid peed their pants what to do. I had the foggiest idea what to do. I was like, oh, peed your pants. Oh. She's like, oh, this is no problem. You got extras in the closet back there? I'm like, I do? Okay. So you can be that person in the building that you go to, right? You're the go-to person. Well, how do you teach this? I don't know. I mean, Matt Elzinga. Who else, you know? I can't diagram a sentence. Matt Elzinga. Oh, I don't know this Matt Elzinga. My computer won't turn on. Matt Elzinga! Sorry, Matt. At least you got the knowledge went down pretty good on all that. That's great. So they will embrace they're not just going to, your students aren't just playing the game of school. The game of school I call is they're like, oh, I know what he wants. He wants these words just this way done. Okay. You know, but do they love learning? And I know that sullen-looking teenager looking at you like, all right, I dare you to make me love learning. It's a challenge. I understand. And your little Joey Uphoffs, it's much easier to get them to enjoy learning because they're eager to learn. And I know many of you are high school teachers, and it's more challenging to get that older teenager to love learning. But that's our challenge, I think, to get better. And then we'll maintain that good reputation in the community. Not just PR schools, that's important, but in the community. I always like to use the example of Skip Hunter. You know, everybody knows Skip Hunter. Why? Because he's an expert, but not only that, he coaches and he refs and he does all these things in the community. He writes for the newspaper. You know, he does everything, and he's well known and respected. Everybody loves him and respects his opinion on things. And not everyone's going to be to that level, but we can challenge ourselves to get out of our comfort zone and you know, help, get involved in the community, help out. Write articles when sometimes, you know, when people need articles written. Different things like that to contribute to the broader learning communities out there, not just the Protestant Reformed ones, but you could start there. Help develop biblical principles for your subject level. I mean, it seems like that came to a screeching halt in the mid-'70s. You know, because every time I do a project on biblical principles, I dig out something that says 1977 on it. I think that was like the cutoff year. After that, nothing was forthcoming on biblical principles. So let's get that going. We can develop a Protestant Reformed think tank. You know, I love it. We had a presenter one time. He put 2 PR books on down on the shelf that were ever written about education. You know. 2 of them. They weren't very big. And then he put a stack of books written by Christian Reformed writers. And I thought, okay, but who's going to write these books? We don't have a think tank where we're paid to think and write. Well, let's create one. I mean, I know we're all got 9 kids and we're teaching all these different subjects and we got things going on. We're not going to write books. I'm not going to, but you know. But let's create a think tank. Let's pay somebody who's smart to think and write. There's all kinds of money out there, all right? There's plenty of rich people in our communities that are just dying to put money into something. And if you give them a good sell job and say, this is what's going to happen, we're going to produce real books that have biblical principles integrated into different levels. It takes time. It takes effort. You can't just whack that together on an afternoon or at a 2-day seminar over the summer for a CED project. I mean, it takes time, and so let's get that happening. You know, let's get something developed, and I think then we can attain those higher levels and show that we're not just shooting for the norm. You know, and I talked to that teacher that was talking to the boy that had the problems at home, and you know, we both agreed. It's like, what's our hope for that boy? That he grows up to be a normal PR. You know, and I thought, no, let's shoot higher. Why can't he be, you know, what is it, just a normal PR? Let's set our goals high and say, why can't that student, so he has challenges in life, but why can't he attain, any kind of position, any kind of degree or job or anything, really. I mean, let's try to promote excellence in our children, challenge them to take on big challenges in their lives. They don't all have to make it in the Olympics or, cure cancer, but it doesn't mean they can't. I mean, they could. Our students could be on the forefront of that kind of research and things too. Who knows? I don't know if I really had much to say, but that's about it. Anything that you can contribute that would help us become better teachers together. The other thing I wanted to mention, I think, is colleagues. And I know Rick Norman tried this, and I don't know if it was very successful or not, but he tried to get us to do peer what did you call that, Rick? Peer observations, and I think that kind of stuff's great. I got a chance to sit in the back of somebody's class, and I'm like, oh, that's how he does that, or that's how she does that. And I just feel like, and I get it, I've talked to other teachers, and they're like, I'm not telling anybody all my best stuff, because they're going to knock it off. And then, by the time they get to my class, they're going to be like, this is dumb, we already do that in so-and-so's class. So we're too guarded of all our best stuff, and I think we need to collaborate, and that's part of the teacher challenge is say, how many colleagues did you collaborate with this week? Did you sit down, with Ed, did you sit down with Brian and say, how would I teach this better? Doesn't have to be formal, could be informal. But I think those are some things we could work on for that authority of recognition as well, as collaboration with each other. Learn from each other to reach that level of authority of recognition, but not forgetting about the basic levels of the authority of our position as teacher, maintain that authority. You build the rapport, but you still teacher-student relationship. It's not buddy-buddy, right? There's a relationship of love, but not the French, like, hey, dude type stuff. And then knowledge. Okay, so that I think I covered all the things I wanted to say. So does anybody have any questions, comments? Mr. Brunige wanted me to open it up to some back and forth for a little while before we close in prayer. Thanks, Matt. Mr. Brunige.
Are there any connections with what you said with classroom management? Helping classroom management, especially that third level.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good point because obviously with the first level you can maintain a strictly run classroom, but to get to the point where the students respect and love you and want to learn in your class, you got to really have not only the the position, but the knowledge and then the recognition that you do care and love for them, and then it'll be reciprocated, And Kyle and I have talked this before. I mean, it's a technique that I've used for years, is you find the kid like Rick Mingrake here who's likely to be a trouble causer and befriend him immediately. And Rick and I were best friends going through high school because I knew he's probably going to be a trouble causer. And so we became friends, right? And he started saying, "Oh, Mr. DeVries is cool. I don't want to make him mad. I want to go into get his approval in my class. I never disciplined you at all because you came to my class and you're like, hey, I want to learn. I want this person to love and accept me. So I'm going to be receptive." And I think that all your discipline problems go away, right? They go away if you befriend, and the student now wants you to love and accept them. Because, that's what they want. And that's what when you have those behavior problems, I like to sit the little kids down and go, okay, you need attention, obviously, but there's better ways.
Could you come back here a minute?
But there's better ways to get attention than just, being annoying, obviously. But yeah, those problems can go away, Kyle. That's a good point. Your wife needs you to get milk. Yeah. or Pizza Hut maybe.
Thank you, Rick.